The Miami Heat are between preseason games, but NBA general managers had a lot to say about the best players and teams around the league. What did they get right or wrong? Are the Heat being disrespected yet again? We answered those questions as well as our own Heat-centric survey on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or in your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. We'll get to why Erik Spoelstra has never been named Coach of the Year in a minute, plus some of our biggest gripes and surprises from the annual NBA GM survey. But that's where we're going to begin today, with NBA GMs predicting that the Heat will finish 5th in the Eastern Conference behind Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, and Brooklyn. David, do you think that the GMs are too low on the Miami Heat?
No, I think that's fair. When you look at what the Heat have done over the offseason, which is basically to say that they haven't really done much of anything and that they're running it back, no one knows exactly what to expect of this Heat team around the league. They're not sure exactly what kind of leaps, if any, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, and the rest of the roster will make around Jimmy Butler, who's another year older, Kyle Lowry, who also is another year older. So I think there are legitimate questions about this team and how they're viewed around the league. That doesn't mean anything, though. The fact that they're ranked 5th could be, it doesn't really matter. I don't think they were expected to win it all last year either. They got some votes as far as a potential winning team, but they still overachieved, and that's what Miami has to do this season as well. Regardless of the expectations, their work might be cut out for them, but they still have to play their hardest each and every night for the next 82 regular season games.
You have to be a real homer to think that this is an on-paper survey, and if you think that on paper the Heat are better than Milwaukee, Boston, or Philadelphia, I know that the Heat beat the Sixers in the playoffs last year, but the Sixers come back better. Like you said, Miami hasn't really done a whole lot to improve their team. Milwaukee probably would have won the whole thing last year if Chris Middleton doesn't get hurt in the playoffs. I know that there's some things going on in Boston right now, but that is a talented group that only got deeper. And as far as Brooklyn is concerned, they're really a believe it when I see it kind of team, but their variance is so high, their ceiling is so high with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons, and it's starting to feel like people are drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit on the net. So look, I have no problem. If you wanted to put Miami 4th, I think that would have been fine too, given that Brooklyn could pretty much just implode in a way that I don't think is possible for the Heat. But I do think when you look at this GM survey and how they have performed in years past, let's just look at last year. 83% of GMs picked Brooklyn to win the Eastern Conference. Now, it was almost that same percentage that was picking Brooklyn to win the entire thing. I was one of those people. I thought that they were just going to cruise their way to the finals, and then Kyrie Irving doesn't get vaccinated, and you have that whole thing. James Harden gets traded. Everything Kevin Durant gets hurt again. So who knows what's going to happen? But the order after the Nets last year was Milwaukee, Miami, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Boston, Indiana. Indiana didn't have a great year. Boston ended up surpassing expectations. But Milwaukee, Miami, and Philadelphia, they were pretty much right with the top 3 there, right? And so they kind of get the right teams, but not always in the same order. And that's why you have to play out the whole season, because injuries happen, different things happen, trades happen, teams implode. Things just happen, as we know. But overall, look, I kind of want to use this as a springboard to go into a different kind of conversation. Is it fair to say that there's a clear top 3 in the Eastern Conference in terms of that top tier of, yeah, these teams, if just as long as they're healthy, all 3 of them have a really good chance of making the finals, and I would probably put Milwaukee, Boston, and even Philadelphia in that tier. I would probably put Brooklyn in a tier by themselves just because of the variance is so crazy with them. And then I would put maybe Miami and Toronto in that next tier. Cleveland's young. I got to see it a little bit first for me to really buy in. I love Cleveland's long-term thing, but in terms of this year, I would probably put Miami and Toronto in a tier, and then after that, it's like Cleveland and Atlanta for me in a tier after Miami and Toronto. Is that fair?
I guess that's fair. I'm more of a believer in Cleveland, less of a believer in Toronto. Like I know that Raptors fans will feel they're being disrespected, but the expectations for Scotty Barnes are so unrealistic at this point in time. Just like they are for Evan Mobley, like this idea that they're both going to suddenly become all NBA players overnight in their second season. We haven't seen that before. We're not likely to see it this time around. So I have concerns about those teams, but that doesn't really matter. As far as Miami is concerned, look, it doesn't matter. Like maybe on paper, the tiers could be clearly separated in terms of what the talent disparity could be. Miami, I still like their chances. And again, I know that comes across as somewhat homerish, but knowing what Bam is capable of, knowing what Tyler's capable of once he takes that leap, if and when he takes that leap, and I'm a believer that he is, I think their chances are just as good as anybody. They all become suddenly much more talented in comparison to other teams around the league. If you have two potential all-star players in Bam and Tyler Herro to play alongside Kyle Lowry, who's still a very good, solid player at this point in his career, and Jimmy Butler, who is a sensational top 10 player around the league, that's a team that's as talented as any around the league.
That's the formula for them, right? Is having 3 top 40-ish players in Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Herro. Obviously, I don't mean to disparage Jimmy Butler. He's a top 15 guy on pretty much any list outside of ESPN. You and I have him in our top 10. But if you get like 3, if that's the depth of talent at the top of your roster, if you have 3 guys in the top 40 of the NBA, we've seen that formula work, right? We saw that in Toronto in 2019. We've seen it in years past. Kyle Lowry is probably on the outside of that, but like you said, still an above average point guard at his position. And then you just talk about the depth along the rest of that roster. The other thing with Miami is, I think when you look at those other teams, Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, Philadelphia pretty much seems locked into this roster. They're so close to the hard cap that they can't really make other kinds of moves. Maybe a smaller bit trade, but nothing very impactful. Boston, they just added Blake Griffin. That kind of felt like their last thing that they could really do. Maybe they could trade a core piece. I just don't really see it happening. Milwaukee could probably do something else, but you're probably looking at maybe moving one role player like a Grayson Allen or something like that for a different kind of role player at a different position to fill a need. But they pretty much feel like that is what it is. Whereas Miami feels ripe for a trade. And if they decide that they want to use draft capital and move some of these stackable contracts between now and the February trade deadline, this is a team that could very much upgrade the roster. We just got done saying they have 3, maybe, depending on Tyler Herro's leap, if they could have 3 top 40 players, they're in a really good spot. But they're in position to maybe trade for another guy kind of in that top 50, 60 realm if they wanted to start using some of the assets that they have. And if they do that, then maybe they do go up a tier.
Yeah, I can see that. Look, there's also the name being bandied about there for several teams in the Eastern Conference. That's Jake Crowder, mulling a potential return to Boston. Milwaukee seen as a legitimate contender, maybe to acquire his services, and Miami in the running as well. So that's another piece that you could potentially add. We've talked about the Harrison Barnes option. There are other options.
I like the Harrison Barnes option. The more that I've looked at it, Harrison Barnes is my number 1 target if I'm the Heat. And I'm not getting that excited about Jay Crowder. I know that the Heat love Jay Crowder. They would love to have Jay Crowder back. To me, you can't part with a first-round pick to bring in Jay Crowder. I would part with at least a first-round pick to bring in Harrison Barnes, depending on what the rest of that trade looks like and what Sacramento wants. Obviously, not trying to get into trade machine talk now. But Harrison Barnes is an elite corner three-point shooter, and that's what you need around Bam Adebayo. He's shooting 47, 48% over the last several years from the corners, where Crowder is very, very streaky. We, of course, remember the great run that he had in the bubble, but we tend to forget how he went really cold in the most important moments in the conference finals and the NBA finals for the Heat. He's a career 40% shooter from the corner. Not great. That's basically average from the corner as a three-point shooter. Very streaky. I would rather have somebody who is more efficient from those spots and can do a little bit more offensively and defensively. Not to say beggars can be choosers, but if I'm the Heat, my number 1 target right now is Harrison Barnes. I don't know how gettable he is in Sacramento. I think the Kings are really going to vie for a playoff spot. We're going to do our BetOnline read here in a couple seconds, and that would be like, if I'm on BetOnline looking at the overs, I'm going over on the Sacramento Kings, so who knows if they try to break things up there. But if they do decide to move off of Harrison Barnes in a contract year, if I'm the Heat, I'm really going after him. That's the kind of move that I think could elevate the Heat into another tier in the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, we'll move on. We'll talk a little bit about Spo and where he ranks among the top coaches in the NBA, at least in the view of certain general managers. But first, as you mentioned, reminder about BetOnline.
BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for football betting information this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and even golf. And let's just look at what we got available to us on the BetOnline website, David. I'm looking at Sunday's NFL games, and here's one that I really like. I've not yet decided on what I want to do with some of my line picks yet, but I like to bet the over-unders, especially early in the season, and I still feel like we're in the first quarter of the season here. The Detroit Lions in New England playing the Patriots, the over-under is set at 45.5. Both of those teams like to grind it out, run the ball a little bit. New England, they're going to want to keep the ball out of their quarterback hands as much as possible. So I like the under at 45.5 between the Lions and the Patriots. That is at BetOnline, so head over to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview starting October 10th, a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one Ultimate NBA Preview starting October 10th. That's next week. Search for Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be getting into our own Heat-centric GM-type survey in the next segment. But before we do that, just wanted to air out some of the gripes that we have with this particular survey because, look, their interview, they put this questionnaire in front of 30 general managers or assistant general managers, or as you've theorized in the past, they're perhaps their interns who are filling it out. You don't know if they have quite a good grip on the teams around the league. Like that's something that affects all of us, whether you're a fan, whether you're a media member, or even when you're in the front offices. Having an accurate gauge for all of the other 29 teams around the league is very, very difficult to do. Your question marks, even as we talked in the first segment, how do you rank the top teams in the Eastern Conference? There's so many questions about each of them. Where does Brooklyn fit into it? Where does Miami fit into it, et cetera? But one thing they did get right, however, was that Erik Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. 52% vote, I believe, amongst the top coaches. Above, who was it? Pop?
Steve Kerr.
Third,
Steve Kerr was at 20. Steve Kerr got 22% of the vote. Pop and Monty Williams were split with 7% of the vote. So far and away, Erik Spoelstra voted at 52% best coach in the league.
Yeah, and look, we've talked about it before. The best coach and around the league, and I don't think it's a debate at this point in time. I think Steve to certainly get some votes for his ability to manage the respective personalities in the Golden State Warriors. We've heard about Monty Williams being able to connect with the people in his locker room, a father-type figure, but also a great leader and coach. And Pop, for all the struggles that the Spurs are going through, still respected amongst his peers, just doesn't have a very good roster. And that's all it takes. You have to have a balance between having the talent, having the good roster so that you can actually coach them and get the most of them. But Erik Spoelstra has, I think, more than any other coach in the league, been able to get the most of every version of his Heat team, whether it was in 2008 with Dwayne Wade, the Big Three era, the years in between, and now with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, et cetera. I think he's still trying to get the most out of those teams. What did you think about his ranking as the best coach in the league? Do you think it's too low, too high? I mean, as far as the percentage, could he have gotten more? Should he have just been 100% vote?
I look. You look at his 52% clip there that he's batting as best coach in the league. That's the same that GMs voted for Steph Curry. 52% of GMs voted Steph Curry as the player hardest to game plan against. Right? Yeah. So he's getting the same respect, Spo, as a coach, as Steph Curry is as a player, right? And Steph Curry is an all-time great. I think Spo is an all-time great, and he was named as such by the NBA itself. He's on the list of top 15 coaches of all time. This is the third year in a row, David, that Spo has gotten the vote for best coach in the league. He's widely respected for his defensive schemes. We know that. He's widely respected for the way that he's able to manage teams, manage egos, motivate players, and also the player development aspect of it can't be overlooked. That's not necessarily a GM survey question, but when you talk to people around the league, they laud Spo for being able to just get the most out of the Max Struses of the world and just finding a new Caleb Martin seemingly every single year. It's just a new guy that pops up like that. The thing to me that sticks out with this is that if Spo is this widely respected in basketball circles and has won, like I said, Coach of the Year now 3 years in a row, or not Coach of the Year, but been named best coach in the league by his peers 3 years in a row, why has he never won Coach of the Year? That to me is wild. And I am not counting like that weird Associated, whatever, not the Associated Press one, but like
Right.
the weird coaching club thing with Mike Budenholzer. Yeah. That doesn't count. That's not a real award. I don't care. Why has he not gotten a real Coach of the Year award? That, to me, he's been in the league coaching for 14 years. Second most tenured coach in the league in Greg Popovich. So you can't say time served. You can't point to that as a reason why he hasn't gotten Coach of the Year. To me, it's crazy.
I understand it. I'm not happy about it, but I understand it. And the reason why is, look, you look at the first 2 seasons, they were underachieving, right? Dwayne at his peak, Spo got them into the playoffs, and they weren't able to really do much during that time. And then the next 4 years was more a referendum on Spo than anything else. I mean, the widely considered view was that Spo was, a decent coach that had a really, really good roster,
right,
with 3 top 10 or 3 top 20 players, even as Wade and Bosch were minimizing their roles. So I think that's why he was being overlooked. And the next couple of years, again, same thing, not great rosters. He was able to get them to the playoffs almost every year. That one season where he went 41-41, I think that should have been like his best season. I mean, if you're going to look at why he's the best coach in the NBA, it's certainly that. But it's the stories, right? It's always the stories. Which is the hot team? Which is the team that's going to finally jump? I could see, what's his name? I can't remember the coach's name in New Orleans right now. Green?
Oh, Willie Green.
Willie Green. There you go. He's going to be Coach of the Year. Why? Because the Pelicans are damn good, and because there's a fun narrative about them. Why? Because similarly to last year, Taylor Jenkins and the Memphis Grizzlies get all this buzz because they're a young up-and-coming team, and that's what it takes when these voters are looking at the best coach. It's the story behind them. Last year's Heat team was already the number 1 seed. How much better can they get this year? They're not going to be that much better. We just debated that. They're not going to win 60 games. It seems unlikely that they will. If they take a leap, when would we see it? Probably during the playoffs, if anything. And that being the case, there's just not enough of a buzz or a story around this team excelling and being coached up to suddenly this high degree where Spo earns this Coach of the Year nomination.
I went through all of the years for Erik Spoelstra, and I really could only find 1 year where he really got snubbed for Coach of the Year. Not to say that he should not have been in the running for other years.
He's always deserving. Yeah, he's
always deserving in the way that LeBron James should probably have more than 4 MVPs, right? You're the best player in the league for almost a decade and a half. You should probably have more MVP awards. Same thing happened with Michael Jordan. This is just what happens. You are so great that you just become basically taken for granted. And I think some of that happens with Spo, but you look at the first 2 years where he was coach before the Big Three era, and I think a lot of people forget that Spo coached 2 years before LeBron James came here. In 2008, his first year as head coach, he took the Heat from a 15-win team to 43 wins with Michael Beasley as their second best player. That's crazy. His first year, he was awesome. Now, he should not have won Coach of the Year that year because he was a rookie head coach, which is not a disqualification, but also the team only won 43 games. It's not a whole lot of wins. So you're not winning Coach of the Year with 43 wins. Won the same amount of games the next year, don't care. The first year of the Big Three, nobody really nationally knew what Erik Spoelstra was about. LeBron James, Chris Bosh coming to town, Dwayne Wade re-signs, fill out the roster with Mike Miller.
Bumped out by Pat Riley at any second now. That was the whole time.
And after starting 9-8 that season, people had more questions than answers about Erik Spoelstra. He wasn't winning it that year. That's all right. The year where he really got screwed, David, was 2012 and 2013. The 66-win Miami Heat. That's the year where he should have gotten it. They had 6 more wins than any other team in the NBA. And the coach who won it was George Karl for the Denver Nuggets, basically getting it just because Carmelo Anthony got traded. That was the reason. The Nuggets won 57 games. It was a really good season for them, not to take anything away from them. But he should not have won Coach of the Year over Erik Spoelstra. But we were still sort of nationally thinking about Spo as Pat Riley's puppet and just mooching off of LeBron James and riding his coattails and all these things, where that was so not true when you look at the adjustments that were made throughout that season. Then you obviously flash forward to the fact that they won the NBA Finals that year. It's a real that's the one where I think he got snubbed. That's the one where he got robbed. And then after that, we love the 41-41 Dion Waiters 7-11 Heat team. A 41-win team should not win. They also lost 11 of their first 50 games or whatever it was. That you don't win Coach of the Year that year. I think the next closest one was last year where he finished, third in Coach of the Year voting. He should have gotten I think he got 1 first place vote. He should have got way more than that. I understand Monty Williams getting it. His team won 66 games. That was more than 13 more than anybody else. Or I'm sorry, 13 more than the Miami Heat won. even though both were 1 seeds. I understand giving it to Monty Williams. It looks worse given how Phoenix flamed out in the playoffs, but I get it. But that would probably have been the other closest one. But the one he was really snubbed in was the 66-win year in 2012, 2013.
Yeah, I could see that. And even then, as you said, it was just he was getting all the success because of the talented roster around. They had Ray Allen, they had Shea Battier, they had all these deep role players on there alongside the big three too. So, Spo just kind of sitting there, holding his clipboard, doing nothing, twiddling his thumb on the sideline as they eke out 66 wins. That, and had nothing to do with him, his adjustments, his managing of the roster and egos and things of that sort. I also like that of all these surveys or all these questions regarding coaching, Spo is the only one that ranks top 3 in all of them. Like, that just is he the best coach. He's also third as far as best manager, motivator of people. He's third best or tied for second with Nick Nurse for best in-game adjustments.
Yeah.
Ty Lue getting some respect, number 1 with 55%. He's also, he didn't get any for running the best offense. That I could see that as well, but he also gets number 1 for running the best defensive scheme.
Yes.
So clearly, just a really, really good coach. Overall, just great coach, but you've got to have the buzz, the storylines behind him. And unfortunately, Spo just has never really been able to do it. Like, it's just impossible. I can't see a scenario in which he could possibly get the award this year. Like, they'd have to win 60-something games.
Yeah, I the guy that I like to win this year is either Ty Lue or Michael Malone in Denver. Those are the kind of names that I'm looking at. I think, at this point, the Bucks are Giannis and no longer Budenholzer, even though he's won a couple of Coach of the Year awards, which is also crazy that he's won a couple and Spo has not. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Does Spoelstra win it this year? Probably not. But then again, if you want to talk about storyline, losing PJ Tucker, basically running it back, and if this team is able to somehow be better than they were last year or be in the top, what would it take? Like, what would it take for Spo to win Coach of the Year? Top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference? And maybe having somebody like Bam or Tyler blow up or something like that. I don't know what it would take at this point.
And that would be used against him, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Like, even you look at that Phoenix team last year, Chris Paul playing really well, DeAndre Ayton playing well, Devin Booker, all these young players stepping up and finding their role. It's just getting this team to play above what their expectations were. I think the expectations are fairly low. Again, 5th in the Eastern Conference. So if they were somehow managed to win 60-plus
60 games, that's what it would. You're right. 60-plus games with this team that nobody thinks can win 60-plus games, then Spo would probably get it. That's probably what it takes. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Well, we'll see. There's other things worth griping about. I guess we'll save those for the next segment because Bam Adebayo not getting quite the respect he deserves as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, but we'll talk about that, plus our own Heat-centric survey in the next segment here on Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. And just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show. And as always, leave a review. We've gotten a lot of great reviews recently as people are submitting those in order so that they can enter their names in our giveaway.
Yep.
You want to tell them a little bit more about that? I know you.
Sure. Official League, the fastest growing sports merch company, is launching an exclusive limited edition hat inspired by Bam Adebayo, designed by viral artist NBA Paint. I'm sure you've seen NBA Paint's work on Twitter and on Instagram. Only 100 of these hats are going to be available for purchase at officialleague.com, and the new silhouettes feature a funny food character inspired by each player. And Bam Adebayo is Ham Adebayo. It's a cool hat. I actually have it over here. Ham Adebayo. I'll put it on right now over my headphones. There's better news. We're going to be giving away a free hat to one of you to enter for a chance to win a free Official League Ham Adebayo hat. All you have to do is leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Then email a screenshot of your review to lockedonheat@gmail.com. But you only have until Bam Adebayo attempts at least 18 shots in a game. So once he does that, we're going to close our entries. So get on it now. Email a screenshot of your 5-star rating or review to lockedonheat@gmail.com for a chance to win a free Official League Bam Adebayo hat.
Yeah. But neither Ham Adebayo nor Bam Adebayo getting the respect they deserve as Defensive Player of the Year. Some other things to talk about from this survey. No single Heat player ranked amongst the tops in their respective positions.
I don't have a problem with that. Where are you going to like, the question is not who are your top 5 small forwards. It's who's the best small forward. Does anybody think Jimmy Butler? Jimmy Butler's awesome. He's not the best small forward in the league.
My problem is Giannis getting votes in 3 different positions.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. It's
That's
crazy.
ridiculous.
People getting cute. Who are these interns being cute? Being like, you know what, Giannis is actually like the best center in the league. Like, what is this weird woke
Or the best small
GM
forward.
survey stuff? Like, what is it like? You're trying to like galaxy brain this survey. There should be like a list, just like there is for all-star voting and all these things. I know it's extremely informal, and this literally does not matter. But it's just these GM interns getting cute is not cute. Stop it. We love Giannis. He is a awesome center when he plays center. He is not a center full time. His position is power forward. List him at power forward. Stop getting cute with this stuff. I'm with you on that. My biggest gripe in terms of Bam is the fact that when it came to most versatile defender, when you got into the specifics, Giannis was 41%. Draymond was 31%. Bam was 7%. Now, I don't have an issue with those three players. I think that's probably accurate. Although I would like to see what Anthony Davis looks like this year.
I think Giannis' defense is overrated.
It should not have been 41%, David. It shouldn't have been. I thought Giannis 2 years ago when he won Defensive Player of the Year, but he's still sort of on that. He's kind of got people are still thinking of him that way. When you looked at Giannis last year, when you watched him play, and I'm not knocking him for this, but he wasn't the player that he was 2 years ago defensively. He wasn't trying as hard anymore, which is fine. That was a team playing for the playoffs, but Giannis was kind of coasting a little bit defensively during the regular season. You ask people who cover the Milwaukee Bucks and around that team, they would say the same thing. To me, Bam should be getting way more than 7% of the vote. This is a guy who could truly guard all five positions at an elite level. The fact that he got just 7% of the vote, again, I don't have a problem with the three names, even though I think Giannis, to your point, is a little overrated in that respect. But those are probably the right three names when you get down to it. Again, we'll see what Anthony Davis and Ben Simmons looks like. People are going to maybe want to start throwing Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley in there in a couple of years. But right now, those feel like the right three names. But Bam should have gotten way more than 7% of the vote. That's crazy to me.
He got some votes for Defensive Player of the Year, but Rudy Gobert, again, surpassing him, Draymond, and Giannis as well. So that's problematic to me. I think it's just indicative of the fact that it's so hard to have an accurate gauge around these teams, whether you're in the front office or anybody in general.
I got two more surprises. Let's move on to surprises here. Kawhi getting 10% of the vote for best perimeter defender. I guess that could have been under gripe, but I'm moving it under surprise because he didn't play last year. Right. So I'm surprised that anybody listed him for anything. What is that? Kawhi didn't play last year.
Kawhi is really good at defending the perimeter.
Also surprised that Marcus Smart got 41% of the vote for best perimeter defender in the league, but got 0 votes for best defender in the league, and he was Defensive Player of the Year last year. So that was surprising to me. Also something that I'm a little happy about. My last surprise here is most surprise. Literally, one of the categories is most surprising move of the offseason, and you've got the normal, people that you would expect to be there. The Rudy Gobert trade, the Donovan Mitchell trade is there. Some GM intern put Andre Drummond going to the Chicago Bulls as the most surprising move of the offseason. That to me is hilarious. It was absolutely meant as a joke. It had to be, and I won't believe it any other way. He was just like, you know what? This GM survey is stupid. I hate that my boss made me do it. I'm going to troll the whole thing. Andre Drummond, that's the most surprising move of the NBA. And I actually am a little surprised because I did not know that Andre Drummond had signed with the Bulls. So maybe I am surprised.
Yeah, he's going to be Nikola Vucevic's backup there.
Good for him.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, that is pretty surprising. But you know what else? Jimmy Butler getting best leader votes. Best leader. And this is 3 years after he was a locker room cancer that split the Philadelphia 76ers. A year after he had split the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Months after threatening to fight Erik Spoelstra on the court. But hey, if you're in that, maybe you're in that style of leadership. It's just it's a specific kind of brand.
All right, so we're going to do our Heat-centric type GM survey now. I've come up with the questions. You don't know what they are.
I do not.
You can list them as the survey does with your top choices, or you can just pinpoint to your number one choice for each of the questions. So you can write the rules however you want to, because that's just the nature of this show. But we'll start off with who will be Miami's most improved player this year?
I will go ahead and say... Ooh, you're putting me on the spot. The two names that come to mind immediately were Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. I think when I think about most improved player in an NBA sense, I don't really care about like the 8th guy in the rotation becoming the 6th guy in the rotation. That to me isn't interesting. Like Max Strus might be really improved, But to me, that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. To me, what matters is if Tyler Herro or Bam Adebayo make a huge leap this year for the Heat. And I'll go ahead and just say Bam, because I like what I've been seeing. And if he just incorporates that three-point shot, everything else is going to change. That it's going to have such a domino effect across the rest of his game. I'm going to go ahead and say Bam.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you can make a strong case for Caleb Martin, too, just because as he gets starter minutes, as we expect that he will, and if he continues to make impact plays the way we did in that one preseason game, I know it's not much of a sample size, but we're kind of looking at what he did last year, the fact that he's made internal growth, and that if he continues to extrapolate that over, again, increased playing time, there's a potential for him to become Miami's most improved player. Most likely to break out on the Miami Heat.
Haywood Highsmith. That one's easy. Yeah, when I think about breakout, it's somebody who we weren't really thinking about before. And so to me, Haywood Highsmith was a non-factor last year. I think he's going to be a real factor in the rotation by the end of the season. I think Haywood Highsmith has a chance. I don't know. They play different positions. I don't know where he's going to play, but I think as the Heat, I would venture to guess as the Heat get closer to the playoffs, Spo will probably venture closer to his comfort zone, which is not playing two bigs at the same time and trying to find ways to get other kind of more speed lineups onto the court. And I think Haywood Highsmith has a chance to be this year's Max Strus, where just sort of on the fringe of the rotation to start the year, but by the end of the year, maybe not starting for the Miami Heat, but a real factor in the night-to-night rotation. So I'll go with Highsmith.
Best shooter on the Miami Heat. Now, keeping in mind that PJ Tucker was technically the best shooter last year with the highest three-point percentage.
If you want to just be, you could be lazy like that and just look at the stats and then just make your conclusion from there. I'll go with Tyler Herro.
Tyler Herro will have the highest three-point percentage on this team at the end of the season?
I don't know, but he'll be the most respected shooter.
That's what the question is, Wes. That's not
how you framed it at first. You said who the best shooter is.
That's the best shooter, buddy.
That's a quantitative versus a qualitative argument. No, probably the best three-point.
The highest percentage three-point shot.
It'll probably be Strus because he has everything created for him. But I do think that the best shooter on the team is Tyler Herro, and I don't want people to sleep on that.
Right. Max Strus is. All right. Best interview on the Miami Heat. Now some more basketball-related questions.
Well, it's Udonis Haslem. But after that, I would say best interview. I've been impressed with Bam. He's been a little, like halfway through last year, he's gotten a little bit more outspoken, a little bit more comfortable, and just more willing to give insightful answers. It was probably PJ Tucker had that award last year. Obviously, he's not on the team anymore. So I'm going to go, I'll go with Bam. Yeah, I've liked what I've heard from him lately.
I think you're overlooking Jimmy, but yes, Black lives do matter.
Well, no, so I mean, Jimmy doesn't talk to us unless it's after a game. He doesn't do practice or shoot-around availability, so I'm not giving it to Jimmy.
Suck. I'll be 100%.
So all of his interviews are bad because those are the only interviews he does. Jimmy Butler's not a good interview. He should be better.
Maybe it's just me and personal taste. The dry sense of humor. He just throws things out there. Like we saw him.
But he does that
equally. In media day, like he was equally parts dry, sarcastic, flirty, and moments with members of the audience or members of the media asking him questions, like asking about, people were asking him about Colombia,
right?
And, what he saw from different countries and things like that.
But he doesn't say anything. He's dry. I look. I have no problem with Jimmy Butler. I like him a lot as a person. He is not a good interview. He uses that dry sense of humor to basically duck every single question. He offers zero insight at all into what's actually happening with the team.
All right. Best player to grab a beer with?
Duncan Robinson or Max Strus. I would say one of those two. I can't get over, I was just watching at the breast cancer awareness scrimmage on Monday night, just watching Max Strus just ham it up with the survivor who he got paired with on the introductions that they do, which is a really cool thing. And most of the players had a good time, but Max Strus was so much clearly having a better time than anybody else, just chatting up his dude the entire time. I think Strus would probably be the best to have a beer with, or Duncan Robinson. But with Duncan, we'd also have to go for pizza. So and that wasn't your question.
I think it's the TJ McConnell annual award for most every man on the roster. I think that Max certainly gets that. But best player to be stranded on an island with?
For survival or for fun?
Hey, it's your call.
Okay.
You take it however you want to. You're the intern here, buddy.
Well, I'll probably just die pretty quick, so I might as well just have a good time. So I have zero survival skills.
Okay.
So who would I have the best time with? I don't know. I'll go with Jimmy with that one. Yeah, let's just see what happens.
They're on there. He's versatile. He's like, yeah, when I was in Colombia, I learned how to build fires.
Yeah, I don't think
How to
he,
build
maybe
tents.
maybe his assistants and his photographers learned how to build fires for him. Are they on the island with me? Is it like the entourage?
No, it is not. It is just for whatever reason, you and
So
ex
it's not
Heat
me,
players
Jimmy Butler, and
stranded.
Chris Brickley just shooting coconuts into trees from 21 feet away.
Gotta get your work in, baby. Deserted island or not, there's a chance of survival. You gotta be doing the work. You're trying to sleep underneath your palm tree at 2 a.m. You hear Jimmy dribbling coconuts. I mean, that's. Are you sure that's the name you want to go with? I don't know.
I'll go with Jimmy.
All right, last one. With Jimmy's locks now retired, best hair on the Miami Heat.
Best hair on the Miami Heat. I like Caleb Martin's new do that we saw in the preseason
Right.
opener. He's got like a little updo happening. Gabe Vincent will switch it up every once in a while from cornrows to the kind of lower afro. I'm trying to think of who else even has good hair. I'll go Gabe Vincent. I'll go Gabe Vincent.
That's a good choice. I think it's a bold choice there. All right. Anything else? Any other survey questions that you might have?
No,
That
no.
does it for me.
I'm trying to think of one on the spot, but I can't really. Yeah. Whose jersey do you think most Heat fans own at this point of players on the roster?
Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, it's probably Jimmy. Who's second? Like Tyler, probably.
Bam.
Bam.
I'd say Bam, then Tyler. Just because Bam's got the longevity, but Tyler will probably eclipse
Tyler's
it within
climbing
next year.
Yeah. All right. That's good.
Well, we know who the best Heat podcast is because you're listening to it. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We'll be posting additional. No, this is old text. I don't know why I'm reading this, but thanks. Make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Trust me, Josh is an expert at this stuff. The best show on the network.
Yep.
If you like fantasy basketball, definitely check out Locked On Fantasy. Make them your second listen every day. This is David Ramil signing out for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.